Okay, so we are going to start. Um, I hope everyone will be patient with me. I'm multitasking. I have to check the waiting room at the same time, also the study. So whenever you hear me silent, I'll be trying to focus. I hope you will bear with me. So we are doing the second part of the first part, or the repeat of the first part of the study we did last week. Don't I have freedom? So we will be concluding the thoughts that we shared last week. So okay. So if the screen is clear, I'm just gonna use the screen. I'm sure everyone will be able to follow easily. So we're looking at the history of the United States right from its beginning. We started with looking at the development of how the colonies came together. In 1619, the few colonies that were there established a government. And when that government is established, we saw that the subject which we were tracing had to do with the issue of the Sunday laws and also the issue of slavery. So on those two subjects, we can trace them easily from the beginning of the United States. So what we saw is that from 1619, we know the form of laws that govern the United States. There were the document which was called the Articles of Confederation. So as the governments were not yet under one form of national government, as they were bringing that into picture, in that process of development, we saw that the influence of religion in some states had so much influence upon the leaders that there were laws which were already in place in terms of how they were supposed to conduct themselves in terms of the Sabbath. So in some states, these laws had already been, they were enforced progressively. And we have seen some of the articles of those laws being applied when people go against them, but some were not enforced. So progressively from 1798, from 1619 up to 1798, when the Constitution is put in place, there's a feeling among especially those who were leaning on the religious side of things that when the final Constitution was put in place in 1798, there was one group which was not happy. we have seen it from the previous studies that one of the main issues that they were crying with was that they feel like the constitution was secular. It was not having religion in it. So just after 1798, I'm sure there are studies where it has been mentioned, there are conferences which are held with the popular religions that time, where they were discussing ways of how they are going to counter the influence of how the government has left out God out of the constitution early in the history after 1798. So as this history progressed, even by the time we come to 1798, we also see that there was already a clear divide in terms of the view on politics and also the view on religion. And based on those two issues, which we are tracing, the issue of the Sabbath laws, the Sunday laws, and the issue of slavery, it had already created two groups. And you could see that the approach which these two groups are using, they are polar opposites. They are not approaching things the same way. So one group which was supporting religious laws in the name of religious freedom, they are using the Bible as their backup or their basis to justify their actions. At the same time, when they look at the issue of slavery, they also had the backup of the Bible. And the other group, which is using a progressive humanistic methodology, they were seeing that even if the Bible, in its time, these things were allowed, it was not making any human sense. So these two groups were clearly visible in 1798. And we start to see an effort, even from 1798, of redefining what religious liberty means. One group was now even challenging that this other group, which is saying in the constitution we have got religious liberty and it's our right, they are misusing that right by wanting to overpower other groups in the name of a religious right. Because when they fight for these rights, what we have seen clearly is that in their words, they are saying we are fighting for the freedom for everyone. We want everyone to be free. But even in the argument which A.T. Jones encountered with this group, that was actually a lie. They were not fighting for everyone. One group is gonna be exposed and they target one group with these laws. It was a way of trying to control and get homage of all these other groups. We knew when we studied the history of the three dispensations from 1798 to the end of the world, when we paralleled that with ancient Israel, the three histories of Egypt, Babylon, and Rome, we know that their target was to get homage from these other groups. They wanted to control Catholics, they want to control Jews, and they want to control atheists. So there was an agenda behind, but they portrayed their fight in the name of the freedom of religion. So in the political spectrum, we also see an effort in trying to end slavery. This is where the movement of the abolitionists began. And as these movements are rising up, the other groups see the other defendant side as a threat. So as we come to 1798, we see this split, especially when you look at the first diagram, which is on the PDF. We see it illustrates the issue of the Sunday law is marked from 1619, and it's a Republican government which is in charge. And we see that the issue of church and state, it's there. And then we also see the issue of slavery. And when this issue is approached, there is friction in terms of how does the Second Amendment talks of all men are equal? At the same time, we have a group of people who are under control of the other group. So in the religious view, the religious liberty amendment has to be redefined. And then when you look at slavery, also the article which talks about all men are equal has to be defined. So you can see right from the beginning that the work that the pioneers of the United States is put in place begin to be challenged. And there is going to be a zeal among both groups where they portray this fight for upholding the principles of the Constitution in the form of they are trying to make the Constitution strong and do its work as what the pioneers wanted. So both those who are on the right and on the left, they don't take responsibility that they are in any way abusing the Constitution. Even though we know one group is abusing it, the other group is trying to make the Constitution have its proper context in each and every dispensation. But these two sides, none of them take responsibility that they are going against the Constitution. So this split, it's actually visible right from the beginning. So in 1798, we see on the diagram, there's Adams, Jefferson, both being backed by religious groups behind them. And we know the story of conspiracies which is behind. One group has to attack the other. And this is the birth of the politics where conspiracies are used to destroy the other party. And as this history progresses, we see that the rift has been widening wider and wider, and it became so clear to see these two groups in their different form. So is there anyone with a question so far or any comment to add before we go forward? Anyone with a comment? Question? Okay, so we'll carry on. So we carried on looking at the progression of this history to the time of 1833 when the Anti-Slavery Society was established. This was the first formalized campaign which was now raising an awareness that we need to stop the issue of slavery. And we see that as this group is now establishing, it escalated the tensions and the fear from the other group. When you come to the history of 1844, we saw that in the religious cycle of especially the main Christian bodies which were present in 1844, the Methodist, Baptist, the Presbyterians, there is a divide, especially on the issue of slavery. The Northern and the Southern Baptists could no longer worship together because of this issue. And when we analyzed this rift which happened in the Methodist Church, it is the one which escalated and led to the results of the Civil War actually. This was actually the catalyst of the Civil War, which happened in 61 to 65. And when you started to look at the history of 1848 on the diagram, we know that in 1848, America was considering to expand and take over Mexico. But the reason why they didn't follow that, they defined mingling the society of the United States with the Mexicans as a threat. And right from there, you could see the mindset of segregation being visible in their minds, that even in this whole issue of wanting to control and rule the world, the mindset of being a separate and distinct group must be the one controlling or ruling the world was already having impact upon their minds. They wanted to take over Mexico, but they are scared that it's gonna contaminate and taint the society of a Christian nation that would represent the leadership role in the world. So, and we also see that the results of these compromises which were